Now we'll start the fourth unit, signal transmission through linear systems. So what is a linear system? First we'll look at what is a linear system, and then we'll look at what are the kinds of systems that we are going to discuss in this unit. So what is a linear system? A linear system is a system that follows superposition principle. If a system follows superposition principle, we know what is superposition principle, right? Superposition principle means the response of the sum of weighted inputs is the same as sum of weighted responses. This is the superposition principle. We have proved the properties of linearity for both Fourier transform and discrete time Fourier transform. So if that property is satisfied, if such property is satisfied, then we call it as linear system. Here x is the input and y is the output. X is the response and x is the input and y is the response. So if x1 of t is given as an input to a system, right? X1 of t is the input to the system, then it produces y1 of t. That means y1 of t is the response of the system to the input x1 of t. Similarly, when you give an input x2 of t, the response is y2 of t, and so on. We have n different inputs and we are getting n different outputs. Then if this is the situation of the system, then if weighted sum of the inputs is given as the input, if x1, x2 and xn all together are added with some weighted inputs, then if this is the input to the system, then the response should look like weighted sum of the responses, or sum of the weighted responses. This is the weighted response, this is the weighted response, right? And this is nothing but the sum of the weighted responses. So basically, a linear system is the one whose response to a sum of weighted inputs. Here I'll write h. Let us say I'll write h. Right? This is the h. H is nothing but the system function. H is nothing but the system function. Right? When I give a sum of weighted inputs as an input to a system h, then if my output is sum of weighted responses, then the system is called linear system. A linear system is the one that follows superposition principle and whose response to a sum of weighted inputs is the same as sum of weighted responses. Filters and communication channels are the best examples for linear systems, right? Filters and communication channels. Then we'll see classification of linear systems. How can linear systems be classified? So the first one is lumped and distributed systems. Linear systems can be classified as lumped as well as distributed. So what do you mean by lumped systems? If the linear system consists of lumped elements, RLC are the lumped elements. They are called lumped elements. If your system consists of RLC elements, then it is a lumped system. Lumped system means it will store energy. Energy is either stored or dissipated. In case of linear systems, we cannot use lumped elements in case of distributed systems, there are no lumped elements. So we cannot describe distributed systems with the help of lumped elements. Examples for distributed systems will be transmission lines, antennas, and waveguides. These are the examples for distributed systems. You will look at these transmission lines, antennas, and waveguides in the subjects antennas and wave propagation and EMTL, electromagnetic wave and transmission lines. In these subjects, you will see detailed description of these distributed systems or distributed elements, right? And to describe these lumped elements, we use differential equations, ordinary differential equations, right? d by d square, d by dt of x of t equals to d by dt of y of t and plus y of t, something like this form, right? Ordinary differential equations. But when you come to distributed systems, instead of ordinary differential equations, we use partial differential equations like dou by dou t of, right? Let us say some y of t, which is the output, equals to x of t. So there is a partial differential equation. This is a partial differential equation. Hence, it is a distributed system. Lumped elements, if the system consists of lumped elements, it is a lumped system. If it does not consist of any lumped elements, it is a distributed system. And lumped system is described by ordinary differential equations. Distributed system is described by partial differential equations. Example for distributed systems is transmission lines, antennas, and waveguides. Lumped element or a lumped system will consist of whatever we talked of, right? Resistor, capacitor. It can have a capacitor. It can have an inductor, right? This is a lumped system. This is a lumped system. We have R, we have C, and we have L. This is a lumped system. So this is one classification of linear system, right? This is one classification of linear system. And one more thing, we will be looking at, okay, one second. And one more thing is, when you have R, L, and C, when you have the lumped elements R, L, and C, we will replace them with their equivalent impedances, right? We will replace them with equal impedances. R is equals to R, L is equals to j omega L, and C is equals to 1 by j omega C. We will replace them using these transformations in any given circuit and then find the system response or the impulse response. R will be replaced by R, L will be replaced by j omega L, and capacitor will be replaced by 1 by j omega C. So for example, if you're given this system and you're asked to find the impulse response, which we'll discuss further in the coming slides. For now, just remember this R, L, and C will be replaced with these values. R, L, and C will be replaced with these values, right? Then the next classification of linear systems is time invariant and time variant systems. Time invariant means if there is a delay or advance in the input signal, there must be an identical time shift in the output signal. If the input signal is delayed, then the output signal must also be delayed, right? If the input signal is advanced, then the corresponding output signal must also be advanced. Then if this condition is satisfied, then we call it time invariant system, right? We have studied about time invariant and time variant systems in the first unit. What does it say? If let us say X is the input, right? if the response of the system if the response of the system, I'll write T of, right? If the response of the system for the delayed input, if my input is delayed, then if the response of the system is equal to my delayed output. This is what we studied in the first unit. If the response of the system to the delayed input is equal to delayed output, then such system is called time invariant system. If this is not equal to the delayed one, then it is called time variant system. So, in this unit, we are concerned about LTI systems. We have studied about linearity. We have studied about linearity, and we have studied about time invariance, right? Linearity and time invariance. If a system is both linear and time invariant, we call it linear time invariant systems, right? If a system is both linear and time invariant, we call it linear time invariant system. So linear time invariant system, in short, we call it as LTI system. In short, we call it LTI system. These linear time invariant systems are generally characterized by linear equations with constant coefficients. The coefficients are generally constant. All circuits using passive elements, RLC, passive elements means RLC. All circuits using RLC are linear time invariant systems. So RLC, what are the circuits that use generally RLC? They are electrical circuits. All electrical circuits which use lumped elements. All electrical circuits which use lumped elements are, are LTI systems. If a system is linear but not time invariant, then it is called linear time invariant system, right? If a system is linear and time invariant, we call it LTI system. If it is linear and not time invariant, that is, if it is linear and time variant, we call it LTV system. LTV system. This is characterized by linear equations with time dependent coefficients. So these systems are also characterized by linear equations. They also are characterized by linear equations, but their coefficients will generally be time dependent. The coefficients are generally time dependent. So that is the classification of linear systems, LTI systems and LTV systems. In this subject, we are only concerned about LTI systems. This is what we are going to study in the rest of the subject. LTI system. Now, one of the important properties of LTI systems is important characteristics of LTI systems is impulse response. So we'll see what is an impulse response. Impulse response means the response of the system. Impulse response means response of the system when the input is an impulse, when the input is an impulse. So if I take my continuous time system, when the input f of t is a continuous impulse, continuous time impulse, when this is my input, it is fed to my system, then whatever output my system produces, whatever output the system produces, y of t is nothing but the impulse response. That is, when I give input as an impulse, when I give impulse as an input to the system, then the corresponding output produced by the system is nothing but impulse response, right? Impulse response. The same thing for discrete time system. I'll give a discrete impulse as an input, and whatever output it produces, it is called impulse response of my discrete LTI system, right? So if the input is an impulse, the corresponding output is nothing but impulse response. Impulse response generally is denoted by small h, small h. So for continuous time it is t, h of t, and for discrete time it is h of n. For continuous time it is h of t, and for discrete time it is h of n. So basically any LTI system can be completely characterized in terms of its impulse response. This is the main thing that we have to remember about impulse response. Any LTI system can be completely characterized in terms of its impulse response. That means if you know the impulse response of the system, you know completely how the system behaves for any given input. You know you can completely determine the system behavior for any input, right? That is what this statement tells. An LTI system can be completely characterized in terms of its impulse response. So first we'll see the representation of a function f of t as a continuous sum of impulses, right? If we take a continuous time function, this is my continuous time function, we will see how can we represent that function f of t as a continuous sum of impulse functions, right? Continuous sum of impulse functions. So whatever I'm showing here in blue color right now is your continuous time function f of t. Now this input excitation function can be represented in terms of element areas. Now this f of t, I am going to subdivide them into number of regions. This is how I am going to subdivide them into number of regions. This is one region, right? This is one region. This is one region. Like that. This is one region, right? These are all separate regions. I am dividing the input function f of t in terms of element areas, right? Element areas. Now any element area, nth element area or any element area can be considered as a rectangle of width. If you look at the function picture here, the width of any area, any sub areas we have considered is delta t, right? Delta t. And since this delta t is considered to be small, we'll consider delta t to be very small. So the f of t can be considered as a constant in that area, right? It can be considered as a constant. So this is a rectangle. It can be considered as a rectangle. So the area of the rectangle is nothing but length into width, right? Length into width. Here the width is delta t and the length is the value of the function f of t at that point. What is the height of f of t? F of t at this, for each element area, it is, for nth element area I can consider f of n delta t, right? For this is my area. So the width is delta t. From here this is n minus 1 into delta t, right? So this is delta t and my height is f into n delta t. So any element area can be considered as a rectangle of width delta t and height f of n delta t. Now when delta t is made so small that it tends to 0, now delta t is made so small that it tends to 0. So what I am doing, this area shown in red, I am compressing it. This line here, I am bringing this line very close to 0, right? That is what I am doing. Delta t is compressed to 0. Then what happens to the element area? It becomes, what does it look like? It will just look like whatever was here, I'm bringing it close to 0, right? I'm bringing close to 0. So now what does this look like? It just looks like a impulse function, right? It just looks like a impulse function. So it approaches a delta function. But what is the strength of the delta function? The strength of delta function is nothing but whatever was the area of the function previously. The area of the function was f of n delta t into delta t, n delta t into delta t. Now this delta function can be represented as f of n delta t into delta t, whatever was the previous area, that is now the strength. The previous calculated area is now the strength of the impulse. And where is the impulse located? Impulse is located at delta of t minus n delta t, delta of t minus n delta t. Now hence the function f of t is a continuous sum of such impulses. Right, first if you consider this impulse, let me draw it again. If I consider this impulse, I'm sorry, not this impulse, if I consider this area and I make it to, and I make it, and I consider delta t tends to 0, what will happen? Now the strength is going to be delta t into f of delta t, f of delta t, and it is nothing but an impulse function of t, t minus delta t. Right, it is at delta t, the position of the impulse is at delta t. So similarly, if I consider for the nth element, how does it look like? This is the strength of my nth element, and its location is t minus n delta t, delta of t minus n delta t. That is what I have here. Now this is for nth element, this is for nth element. Now we have infinite such elements from minus infinite to plus infinite. F of t exists from negative infinity till positive infinity, right? So if I take a continuous sum of these impulses from minus infinite to plus infinite, then and I make the limit delta t tends to 0, it looks very similar to my f of t. It looks very similar to f of t. So that is what I'm saying. I'm representing f of t in terms of continuous impulses. F of t in terms of continuous impulses. This is nothing but my impulse. This is nothing but my impulse. And this is the strength of the impulse. And I'm taking a continuous sum of my impulses from minus infinite to plus infinite. That is my f of t. Now let h of t be the unit impulse response of the LTI system. This is what we discussed previously in the last slide. H of t is the unit impulse response. That means when input is given as an impulse, the response of the LTI system is h of t, unit impulse response of the LTI system. Therefore, the response of the LTI system for an impulse function of strength f of n delta t into delta t, which is located at t is equal to n delta t, is f of n delta t into delta t. This is the original strength of this impulse function, and delta of t minus n delta t will now become h of t minus n delta t, right? If I have delta of t as an input to a system, if I have a delta of t as an input to my system with some function, system function h, my output is h of t. My output is h of t. Now, if I have delta of t minus t naught, t minus t naught, what will be the response of the system? Since the system is an LTI system, a delay in the input will introduce a delay in the output, h of t minus t naught, right? Similarly, if I have T naught is equals to, if I have T naught is equals to n delta T, n delta T, then what will be the output? And what will be the output? Output will be h of T minus n delta T. This will be my response. Then the strength of the impulse for each impulse, what is the strength? The corresponding strength is f of n delta T into delta T. This is the corresponding strength. So this is the strength, means it is going to be a constant. It is going to be a constant. So if I multiply by constant here, what will happen? Since it is a linear system, if I multiply by a1, what did the linear system say? If x1 gives my response y1, then a into x1 gives a response of a into y1. So I will multiply the same amplitude on the right hand side. If I multiply the same amplitude on the right hand side, what will happen? I will get f of n delta t into delta t into h of t minus n delta t. Okay. Now using the superposition theorem, the response y of t of an LTI system for any given input. Now this was our so this one I am going to pass it through a system. When I give an input f of t, I'll get an output corresponding to f of t. That output I'm considering it as y of t, and this is going to be transformed. That is going to be transformed. This is what we have discussed so far. F of n delta t into h of t minus n delta t into delta t. Right, that is my response of the system. This is the response of the system. Now when delta t becomes to 0, I am going to apply this limit. When delta t becomes 0 or tends to 0, what will happen? What will happen? Now I have impulses at this point, and then at this point, at this point, at this point, at this point I have impulses. When the distance between these two is delta t, when it becomes so small that it tends to 0, how will this look like? It will look like uh, for my first impulse, my second impulse, my third impulse, and my fourth impulse, and my fifth impulse somewhere over here. They are very close to each other that they look like a continuous function. Since now they look like a continuous function, that is, the distance between two impulses is almost 0, instead of summation, I can consider integration. I can now consider integration. Now integration minus infinite to plus infinite, f of tau n delta t, I'm calling it as tau, f of tau h of t minus tau, h of t minus n delta t is tau, and d tau, and then we have d tau. So what is this? If you observe this integral, it is nothing but the convolution integral. This is the formula for convolution, right? Convolution of two different functions, f and h. From this we can say that the output of any general input may be found by convolving the given signal with the system's impulse response. So if you look at this equation, what does it say? The response, this is nothing but the response of the system y of t, and f of tau is the input given to the system, and h is the impulse response. For any given system, h will be same for one system, we'll have only one impulse response, right? Then, if my input is varied, if my input f is varied, then I will get my corresponding output, right? So the output of any general input, f of t is my general input. F of t can be any input. So if if I give any input, if I give any input f of t, how will I obtain my y of t? Just by convolving the given input f with h. So I should convolve my input signal with the unit impulse response of the system to obtain y of t. That is why we have said previously that if we know the impulse response of the system, then we can completely characterize the system, right? So once the impulse response for a system is known, then the response of that system for any input can be obtained. How? By convolving input with impulse response, by convolving input with impulse response, and then we can characterize the entire system for any input. We can characterize the entire system for any input, right? So this is the general formula. Y is the response, y of t is the response, that is equals to f of t is the input, f of t is the input convolved with h of t, impulse response, right? Now this is for the continuous time. So similarly for discrete time systems, this is how we are going to express the system, right? So y of n is the response of the system. Y of n is the response of the system. X f of k is the input to the system. Input. This is the response of the system. This is the input to the system, and this is the impulse response of the system. So all of these are for discrete systems. All of these are discrete systems or discrete signals. So hence for discrete time LTI systems, this is the convolution sum. Here we had a convolution integral. Here we have a convolution sum. So this is how it is expressed. Right? This statement here, once the impulse response for system is known, then the response of the system for any input can be obtained by convolving input and the impulse response. Holds good for discrete time systems also, not only for continuous time but also for discrete time. It is absolutely true. Then, so that is how we have described the given system or given function in terms of a continuous sum of impulses, and we have found out a way to calculate the response of that system for any given input. If a system is given, then we can calculate the response of that system for any given input. How? By convolving input with the impulse response, right? So that is the representation of a function in terms of continuous sum of impulses.